All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's exciting webinar, Enhancing Workplace Safety Through Effective Mentoring. My name is Christina and I am a part of the MyOsh team. And today I am thrilled to have you all here as we dive into the powerful impact of mentoring on creating a safer, more productive workplace. Joining me today is one of my favourite humans, Annette Gray from Annette Gray Consulting, who is constantly empowering, mentoring, and guiding women to be their most powerful, authentic selves. Today, we'll uncover how structured mentoring programs can transform workplace culture and significantly enhance health, safety, and environment outcomes. So today, let's get ready to understand the core principles of effective mentoring, learn practical strategies to implement and sustain mentoring programs, and discover real-world success stories from Annette's Mentoring Made Easy program. Of course, we'll have an interactive Q&A session, and chat box will always be open so we can tackle your specific mentoring challenges and opportunities as well along the way. So don't be shy there. Whether you're a safety professional, HR leader, or manager, this webinar is going to be packed with valuable tools and knowledge to leverage mentoring for safety excellence. So let's get started. Over to you, Annette.
Thank you so much. Christina, I'm just delighted to be here and talking about my favourite topics. And we've got a few comments coming through in the chat. So I'm curious, I'd like to know, why are you here? What is the one key thing you want to find out about mentoring? Could you put it in the chat, please, so I can steer the conversation towards that? What one thing you would like to know about mentoring, if you could put it in the chat? We've already had one comment.
I might start while we're waiting. One of my main things with mentoring is getting the courage to ask for one.
Yeah.
I think it's hard sometimes, especially, I mean, I don't know, I feel like a mentor has this sort of stereotype where you have to be older. And that's not necessarily always the case. So I think, if we could unpack how you go about getting one and working up the courage to get one, and ways to approach someone to be a mentor. I guess there'd be a few different ways that would be seen to be a bit, oh God, you probably shouldn't approach someone like that. And different ways that you might come across as just coming in to grab all their information and bailing, rather than just appreciating them for who they are and what they're offering. Oh, we've got some more coming through, so I can stop talking. Some other options are how to be an effective mentor, any barriers that we're facing, how mentoring can be used to improve safety. That's a really important one. How to contextualize, I'm proud of myself, I nailed that. Off-the-shelf OHS training our team members are required to undertake by mentoring them in their real-world jobs.
Right.
And developing meaningful relationships in a mainly male-dominated workplace. And then we've got another one that says, I've been a mentee as part of the AIHS mentoring program and benefited enormously. Getting a second opinion from mentors from a strategic perspective is crucial. I completely agree with that. And I've just got one more. How to mentor when no formal process is in place at the workplace. That's a really good one too.
Awesome. So I'm going to tackle a few of those.
Yeah, love it.
I want to do it through, why do we get a mentor first? So what is the reason why we need mentors? So I want everyone to if you've got a piece of paper near you, I want you to draw like an oval in the middle of the page, like it's a boardroom table. So have a seat at your personal boardroom table. So if you had a board of directors that support you to be the best human you can be inside and outside of work, who would get a seat at your table? Who would be your dream team that would help you be the best human possible, like inside of work and outside of work? So it's like we're coming up to the Olympics. If you're an elite athlete, and you were Ariana Titmus, who's her dream team that needs to be around her table that supports her to perform at her best? Yeah. So I want you to put down who are the names that get around that boardroom table for you personally. And most of us have about 6 or 7. So just let me give you 30 seconds. Write their names down. Who would be around your boardroom table, your dream team that helps support you be the best you can?
It's like a real world experience of that question, who's your dream dinner guest? When they say, yeah, it's like, who would you like at your dinner? But
So,
these people are actually in our life.
They're in our life. So they may be parents, they may be siblings, they may be children, they may be relatives, cousins, grandparents, maybe friend, it may be a boss, might be a colleague. Yeah, so all these people can actually support you to be at your best. So what is mentoring? Over the years, I've run many mentoring programs and teaching mentors how to actually mentor, because most mentors just get told you're a mentor. I know in terms of formal inside organization programs, it's like you're going to mentor Christina, or you're going to mentor Jack, but never given the skills to be able to do it. And I know what one of the questions I think is how do you be an effective mentor?
Yes.
I think it comes down to 3 things. Yeah. How do you actually structure the conversation? And I think most mentors fall into the trap of, I just need to download all my wisdom so that you will learn from my experience. That's not always the best thing for the mentee, because, it worked for you, but it mightn't work for them.
I was going to say, you sort of need to understand how your mentoree learns and how they take in the knowledge and how they are as a person before you go down the path of structuring anything, so that they take it in correctly. Yeah.
Yes. And I like to be a bit more solution focused. So when I train mentors to do, be part of formal mentoring programs in organizations, I train them to be coach-like. Yeah. So rather than just purely guide and give advice, ask first rather than just tell. Yeah. So ask, have they been in this situation before? What worked for them in the past? Because here's the thing, when someone wants advice or input or wants something to be different, they've generally had a hint of that in the past. Otherwise, they wouldn't know to ask. Yeah. So actually finding out, so have you been in this situation before, and what worked for you before? So for some, it might be, I need to have this challenging conversation this afternoon, but I'm not sure how to do it. So if I was mentoring someone like that, I would be saying, so have you had to do this before? What worked for you before? Or do you know anyone who's done this well with you previously? So we're finding out what their know-how is already of that topic or a similar situation. And if they have nothing there for their own experience or others, we can then give our input as a mentor. We could say, well, what I've seen work for others. So I'm still not saying this what works for me. What I've seen work for others is X, Y, and Z. So there's something about being respectful of what the mentee brings already. So finding out what they know first. So taking this coaching approach slows you down in terms of giving advice straight away. So circling back to the three things I think mentors need to do well is how do they structure the conversation? Yeah. Finding out what is that the mentee wants from this conversation, you know, or from the mentoring experience. So some formal programs work mentors. Someone said they're part of the AIHS mentoring program. I run programs at AIHS, so I'm glad you're here. But generally it's a year that you're meant to be paired up with your mentor or mentee. And
it's
so
not just a quick fix.
not really. Sometimes it can be if it's, outside of work. If you think of, your dream team, it might be just a one-off conversation, but generally it's a series of conversations. So if we're formally having a relationship with a mentee, then we'd want to get clear of what is it that they want from the experience. If at the end of the year this was been the best relationship ever, how would you know? What have you gained from this experience? So we're getting clear of bounding what is it they want and what their goal for the experience is. And I'll have to tell you, over the years, confidence is the number one thing that I've experienced in terms of women mentoring programs, that they want confidence to speak up. They want confidence to, go for that next position. And generally what the mentor is a cheerleader for them and to help them build their confidence. So what is the structure? How do you get clear of what are we bounding here? What is it our focus of the conversation is going to be? So I have a really neat little model I use for that, which, I describe in my Mentoring Made Easy program, which I'll describe later on. The second is good conversational skills. The 5 things that make conversations work is how you listen, how you ask questions and ask solution-focused questions rather than problem-focused. How do you give and receive feedback? Because often what happens in the interaction between the mentee and the mentor happens in every other relationship. So you can be like the sounding board, but you can also be like the one providing feedback around, did you notice you talk really fast and I find it really hard to keep up with you? Were you aware of that? I'm curious, what's that about, that you talk really fast?
Is that a subtle hint? Because
guilty. So you can be that, guide on the side around what are you seeing that's working for the person, but what do you see that's getting in the way of their effectiveness? And when you build this trusting relationship with your mentor, they can give you honest feedback. And I love the quote, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So if we can be clear with people around, this is really working for you, do more of this, but this is where you might need to adapt. But I like to say, before you give any feedback, or what I call observations, because feedback is a loaded word, you need to get people to sign up for that at the beginning. So we're going to have a lovely conversation over a series of the year. Are you up for me to give you feedback on where I think is working for you and where might be getting in the way of your effectiveness? So what we do in the beginning is called contracting, or expectations. What do you want from me as your mentor that would be helpful for you to get a great experience here?
Yeah, I just wanted to see whether any of our audience has actually had any good or bad experiences with a mentor, so that we can work our way around figuring out how to approach a situation like that or benefit from that situation. That I just wrote that quote down, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And I honestly could not agree more. The amount of times I say to people, if you tell me something's wrong straight away, let's tackle it straight away. Whereas if we let it fester, I'm getting anxious, you're getting anxious, it's getting blown out of proportion, and it's not going to be nice for any of us. And that quote is just so timely, but so important. Might pop that on a t-shirt.
It's attributable to Brené Brown, who's
I
written
love her. Yeah.
a lovely book, Dare to Lead, and one of the
Yes.
most popular TED Talks ever on vulnerability. But, in her Dare to Lead book, she talks about being clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So maybe, Christina, if we circle back to some of the questions, so that I can work through them as we go through the.
So do we want to start from a mentor perspective or from a mentee perspective?
Let's start mentor.
Okay, perfect. So Sharon has asked how to be an effective mentor. I think we just touched on a few of those things then, making sure we're structured, making sure we're clear, making sure we understand. And I think one of the main things is building trust, because when I think of the word mentor, I think of the word trust. And if there's no trust, you're not going to go to your mentor with anything, are you? And you're not going to trust what they tell you in return. So I think we've covered that one. How can mentoring be used to improve safety?
So if you think about, there's two things people want at work. They want to be valued for the work that they do, but they also want to learn and grow. And generally, the number one thing people leave organizations for currently is, I'm not being valued by my immediate manager, or I'm not growing and developing. And I think safety professionals, you have a choice of how you work with people. Are you, the police or the compliance person who's checking off that people, are meeting the safety standards? Or are you a guide on the side that actually supports people to do their best at work in terms of their responsibilities around safety? And I think that comes down to the way you be with people. And that was the third area that I was going to talk about in terms of the three pillars or the three elements that make mentoring work, is how you structure the conversation, your conversational skills, and the way you be. And you touched on the ability to build trust. I think it's probably the number one thing. People are not going to open up with you if they don't trust you. So how do you build trust? Well, it's not about critiquing. It's not about finding when they get it wrong, but actually catching them when they get it right and how they can create more of that. So I like to, train mentors to take a solution-focused approach to how they work with people. How do you be that guide on the side to help them grow and develop, and notice when they get it right so they can create more of that?
Yeah, because it's like that age-old thing where people will tell a million people when they're unhappy with something, or when they've done something, they've had a bad experience, but when they've had a good experience or they do something right, it's crickets. And we need to flip that switch, don't we? And we need to start telling people, oh my God, you've done that amazing. That's perfect. Like, let's keep going that way. And then they know, okay, well, we can continue down this path and not have to wait until someone goes, oh no, you've stuffed up. Like, let's focus on the negative.
Yeah.
But in terms of how mentoring can be used to improve safety, one of the things that popped into my mind was, if you've got a mentor, you can bounce ideas off them, and you can bounce thoughts, and you can bounce potential situations off them. And if in your mind you're thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this, but then they say, no, hang on a second, maybe you could look at it this way, or maybe you could look at it that way, they could essentially be stopping you from making it a mistake. They could be stopping you from getting injured. They could be stopping you from doing something incorrectly, just by asking a simple question to your mentor, who you've built that trust with and who you've built that respect with. And I think that could be a key area where mentoring can be used to improve safety tenfold.
Yeah, definitely. It's the way you have conversations.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we're respectful of people and have the belief that people are doing the best they can,
Mm,
and that part of it is how do we help them create awareness around what they're doing? I'm thinking from the mentee perspective or the average employee. How do you help them create awareness around what's expected and then allow them to take responsibility for that?
mm, mm.
And to do that, that's the way the safety professional or the mentor asks questions,
Yeah,
and where do they focus the questions? Yeah.
yeah. Sticking in line with the mentor perspective, Eric has asked how to mentor when no formal process is in place at the workplace.
Cool. So you don't actually have to be told you're a mentor to mentor,
Mm,
and even my husband talks about this. We're both in our later part of our careers. And I said, what is it you get out of your work? And he said, I love mentoring younger staff members.
mm,
You know, he's not told he needs to do that, but he gets great joy out of
mm.
doing that and growing other people. So, yeah, don't wait till we have to have a formal mentoring program to help people. And this may help actually. I've read this wonderful article and I didn't write here. Oh, Anthony Jean, I think his surname is Tjan is his surname. There's certain mentors we need in our life, and he describes 5 of them. One is, how do I master my craft? So for me, I'm a professional executive coach, but I facilitate mentoring programs and leaders coach programs. I want to get really good at my craft. My craft is coach and facilitator. So I'm going to seek out a mentor that can help me get better at that, just like a professional athlete would in terms of their craft. So they have someone who's good at that. Then the other is the champion of your cause. So when we're talking about championing of your cause, is there's something that you're really passionate about. I'm really passionate about helping women in STEM move into leadership. So I'm going to seek out a mentor that might be able to help me with that cause that I'm really interested in. The third might be your co-pilot or peer mentor. So
Mm,
in our own teams, we can have people that we rely on because they're a bit better at that skill than I am. And I'm going to, have them as a co-pilot to learn off, you know. So again, you don't need a formal, this is your co-pilot or peer mentor. You just ask people for that or notice who's better at this than me that I can learn off.
And it also would come back to your table that we did at the start. When you think about it, it doesn't necessarily have to be someone at work. It could be your best friend. It could be someone in a completely separate industry, but you know that they're respected and you know that they're at a different level and you want to ask their opinions and you want to gain their thoughts and stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be within a structured workplace, does it?
No, exactly. And that comes to the 4th kind of mentor, which is the anchor. And the anchor is someone who's outside of your industry,
Mm,
but can help you get perspective around there's actually other ways of doing this. Because we
mm,
can get a bit, particularly when we're in roles. Previous years ago, I was a HR professional. So we can get into blinkered view of how
mm,
things need to happen. Like safety professionals, we can get blinkered into how things can happen. But when we get perspectives, mentors outside of our industry, they can make us a bit more worldly about, there's other ways of approaching it.
mm.
It doesn't have to be just this tunnel way that's happened all the time in our industry. Yeah, so getting external industry support. And the last is the reverse mentor. And I do work with Ventia. I'm not sure of others. They're an infrastructure company. And they have so many different mentoring programs. One is called reverse mentoring, where senior people get mentored by younger people. Yeah. And it's called reverse mentoring because it's, I get it from my daughter who's
I was going to
25.
say that's TikTok for me, where they tell me ankle socks are no longer a thing. I need to bloody wear crew socks now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, we can actually learn from people who are early on in their career,
Yeah,
because they have a different take, a different perspective. So thinking about, you're not going to get everything from one mentor. I have a colleague, former colleague, she is now, that we've been mentoring each other for about 10 years now. And we have our early morning calls. I always know that I'll be able to talk to her between 6:30 and 7:30 when I'm out walking the dog. And I'll often call her and go, this is happening,
yeah.
what's your take on it? So yeah, think about, there's different reasons you get a mentor. It could be career wise. It could be, I've got this really challenging relationship with my immediate boss and I don't know how to handle this. That might be
Yeah.
a family friend or a family member that might mentor you on that. So be open-minded that you're not going to get everything from one individual. And if you look back at your dream team, they'll be offering different things for you that
I was
helps
going
you
to
do
say,
the best you can.
I say that to so many of my friends. I heard it somewhere, I can't even remember, but say, for example, your husband or your partner or your significant other, they are never going to be everything you need in the one human. And it's as soon as you realize that, you sort of go, oh, you can breathe without me being annoyed at you now because I can go to this person and talk about that. I don't have to do this with you. I don't have to do everything with you. I can talk to other people. And I think it's so important to remember that that doesn't only make sense in a relationship sense, it makes sense in a relationship environment, sorry, it makes sense in a whole myriad of places, your workplace, your friendships, your relationships, your family. If you remember
Yes,
that you can get something from everyone, you will holistically be a better person for it.
definitely. So more questions, Christina.
Okay. So how about developing Leanne, am I saying this correctly? Developing meaningful relationships in a mainly male workplace. That would be hard.
Yeah, it's tricky, and I only this year I've stopped doing it, but I was running a Women in Construction for NAWIC, National Association for Women in Construction. I ran their mentoring program for 10 years. And they were getting mentors that were outside of their organization. And all I can say in those situations, sometimes you need someone outside of the organizations to help you navigate that, or it's also within the organization. It's finding that right person who you can be open and honest with around how it is for you in that context. And they're
Erica
all
has also said
go on, sorry.
Erica has also said particularly tricky when the female isn't a sports person. Oh God.
Yes, and I think that's where we need to change the culture within
Mm.
companies that, because it used to be going off to golf days to build relationships, and that sort of counted out a lot of people who weren't into golf, So we have to rethink how we build relationships in organizations or with clients and those sorts of things, because the old patterns of doing things don't really cut it these days.
I think another huge barrier a lot of people would face when it comes to mentoring is moving past the stigma or the stereotype that it's not needed, or it's in a industry where people would seem to think that there's no time for that. Like, let's get it, like, just get on with it. As well as not like somebody like Steve's actually mentioned is a huge barrier, getting senior leadership to buy in on the idea. How do we do that?
Yeah, the $1,000,000 question. So, it's finding that organization that actually are into this, and you can find that out early stages in the interview process. But when you're in an organization, you can actually form it from where you sit in your own team. So it doesn't necessarily have to be reliant on senior management or senior leadership to give that as a mandate.
And that's stage 7, vigilante mentoring.
But some people are never going to see the value about
No.
growing and developing. And look, we're in a climate now, the economy's dropped. The first thing to go is professional development. And I'm in that industry. I see things, people stop that. It's a very short-sighted view, that we stop professional development. Professional development can still happen on the job, but it's up to the immediate manager to take responsibility for that, as well as team members taking
I was going to
responsibility.
say, yeah, it's also a huge individual responsibility. I mean, I guess, Steve, to answer your question for myself, if you are finding it hard for senior leadership to buy in on the idea of mentoring or putting in a process for mentorship in your workplace, take it upon yourself to do it. Let's reach out to other colleagues and see if they have an idea or if they've got a thought to do that as well. You might not be the only one that wants it. And in that case, you can join together and work together without senior leadership, and it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, exactly. I would have hoped in some organizations it's up to people and culture or learning and development to actually, set that agenda. But sometimes the focus is all about costs. But these conversations are informal. You do not need to have a formal program to have mentoring happening. You can actually just reach out to people and say, I really like how you do that. How do you do that? And it might be just these informal conversations that happen. It doesn't necessarily have to be a formal program. I know if I get back to Ventia, they have a whole range of mentoring programs. There's mentoring for women, there's mentoring for graduates, there's that reverse mentoring that I talked about. They are more committed to that than the usual organization, which is wonderful. But if we are going to attract and retain best people in organizations, they need to be helped to grow and develop. And one aspect of that is mentoring.
I know at Myosh here, we are assigned a mentor. Every single new person that joins is assigned a mentor. And one of my ones, Maddie, she has been a mentor for multiple people, but she is so incredible when it comes to, like what you said at the very start. She won't just give you the answer. She'll encourage you to go and research it. She'll encourage you to coach. She'll coach you through it. Just because people learn differently. And I guess if you're just copying and pasting answers from one person to the next, you're not going to get the information. You're not going to retain anything. So we're very, very fortunate that mentoring is something that Myosh takes seriously. So we're very lucky in that sense. Another thing, so going back to my question that I asked everybody, have you had any good or bad experiences with a mentor? Chris has mentioned focus the mentoring on how to change the safety culture of a workplace. This will lead to bigger impacts on the ground and better safety outcomes.
Definitely. I would totally, that was Chris. I would totally agree. Mentoring, coaching, having these conversations, if whatever your agenda is in the organization, that's the way change happens, through how you have conversations, how you help people grow and develop. Whether your focus in your organization is to focus on psychological safety, that happens through interactions and through conversations. And one of the principles I like to train people in as a mentor is have a beginner's mind. And what I mean by that is in your interactions, don't assume you know the answer for this person. So a beginner's mind is one of the top things I coach leaders on is how to have difficult conversations.
Mm.
So each time I hear that as the topic, I can't, as the coach, sometimes I'm mentoring this as well because people have no frame of reference how to do this well. But each time I hear it, I have to hear it like it's the first time because it's different nuances around their situation, what they want, how they want it to look different. I can't immediately go, oh, I know the answer to this topic, and I'll go into my advice giving mode. No, we want to be non-judgmental and we want to have a beginner's mind so we can understand their context because it's always different. And when we do that, we make it safe for people to open up and tell their stories.
And there's no assumptions being made.
Exactly. And if we hijack the conversation, go, well, here's what you need to do. You need to do X, Y, Z. No, we need to find out what have they tried already? How does this impact them? What difference would it make if they were better at that? So we have what we call a beginner's mind. That tones down the judgment that we make and actually tones down the advice giving. We don't want to be giving advice too early. It's not never, but we don't immediately go to advice giving, which is often what mentors who have no idea what they're doing tend to do.
Going back to, circling back to the whole art of conversation and how important it is. When Steve suggested that there's a barrier with senior leadership buy-in, they might not realize that there is a need for mentoring. They might not realize that there is many of the people in their workplace that are actually struggling and need somebody. And it would come as a leader of a business, they're so busy. There's a million tabs open at all times. They've got their mind on 17 different projects at once in all different aspects of the job. So they're not always going to be thinking about the thing that you're thinking about the most. Do you know what I mean? And so going back to the conversation, we need to make sure that we have someone in the workplace. It may not be you going straight to your leader, you going to your colleague or someone you know that could go to your leader, to go to them and say, look, this is something that we're experiencing. We need to sort of tell them that the need is there. That might not always need it at all times, but you do need to let them know that there is a need for mentoring because they might not know. It might be as simple as that. On the flip side, they may know, and it might not be a priority for them. And in which case, you can then go down the vigilante route. But yeah, so that's just a thought I had that I thought I'd go back to. What do you think?
Yeah, and if I add to that, Christina, it's around where, not the weakest link, but where is the link who there is an openness. If I go back to your question, it was Chris, wasn't it? Who said about senior leaders. There's always someone on was it Steve or
Steve? Yeah, Steve. Yeah.
There's always someone who is a bit curious, a bit open, that could be, the coalition of the change.
Yeah.
So how do you plant the seed with them who then have more influence over their peers, So it's, educating them around the need for this,
Yeah.
and that they can start influencing at their level.
Become friends with your squeaky wheel colleague.
The good squeaky wheel, the
yes.
one that's open and interested. And, if we think about what's going on in construction at the moment, which is a culture of change, there needs to be more openness around how do we change the culture? We change it through conversation. And there's a lovely quote that I often use in my programs: conversation is the fundamental unit of change. If you change the conversation, you change everything that surrounds it. So how do we have these adult conversations at work? So that would be what I'm recommending as safety professionals. You're the guide on the side, not the, parent-child relationship. I'm going to critique, I'm going to check, and I'm going to make sure.
Eliminate the hierarchy.
Yeah, it's more
Get
about
all on the same level.
Yeah. So that means being respectful, asking questions, being curious, being interested. They're all the way of being things that I think safety professionals can do if they want change around safety, psychological safety, addressing psychosocial hazards. All those things can happen through the conversation and getting the conversation being safe. That's the
Exactly. And one of my biggest pet peeves is assumption and assuming the answer before you even ask the question. And I think it's so important to remember that just because there was a no before doesn't mean there's going to be a no again. Do you know what I mean? So we need to continually re-ask the question. And the more a question gets asked, or the more the need rises to the top, they're going to realize, oh shit, this might be something we need to action more, or we need to prioritize more. It's coming to the surface more and more. So eliminate assumptions and listen and talk, I think, is one of our main things we want to get across. Yeah. Steve's also mentioned, as a safety professional, the key I have found is education. Even when something has been done wrong, how do you correct it to prevent a reoccurrence? Learn and grow. And I could not agree more.
Yes, and if I add to that, Steve, it's around when we do get it right, how come? So there's always incidents that haven't worked, but that might only be 10% of the time. For the 90% of the time, how do we get it right? What are the conditions for getting it right? How can we create more of that and learn from when we do get it right? But I'm wondering, Christine, if we go back to some of the earlier questions to make sure we haven't missed any of those.
So Sophia has written, how to contextualise off-the-shelf OHS training our team members are required to undertake by mentoring them in their real-world jobs.
Oh, what a big question, Sophia. I think
I'm going to put my hand up and say, I don't understand.
So I think there's two things here. There's a task that you do as an in OHS training. There's conditions of what are you expecting. So that's the task. But then there's the relationship. And so that's circling back to what Steve said, it's about learning and growing. So if we want people on the job in the real world, as you say, Sophia, that is about the relationship you have with people. And if people trust you, they're going to be more likely to be open to what you have to say. What I notice in some and here in terms of some safety professionals, they're wanting to critique rather than help people learn and grow. So how do you work beside someone? And I often like to say guide on the side rather than sage on the stage. And sometimes, like HR professionals or safety professionals, we can get into the compliance mindset rather than the learning and growing that Steve mentioned. I'd like to do Dennis's question. He said, I've been a mentee as part of AHS mentoring program and benefited enormously. Getting a second opinion from mentors from a strategic perspective is crucial. Yes, definitely, Dennis.
100%.
Totally agree with you. What else do we need to go? How to be effective mentor. I think we've spoken about that, Rachel.
If anyone has any other questions or areas that they'd like to discuss, pop it in the chat. We'll go through it now. We've got a few more minutes left, so we can still keep going. What would if you were new to a workplace you'd been at a workplace prior and it wasn't mentor friendly, or it wasn't somewhere where you were able to speak up and you were quite unsure about how to go about speaking up to see if there was someone you could chat to and trust and build that trust, how would you put the feelers out? Like, how would you attack that to find someone that you can trust?
Two ways come to mind. I'm not saying they're the only ways, but two come to mind around having a sounding board outside of the organisation saying, I'm experiencing this. What's your take on it? You know, how would you suggest I navigate this? That would be one way. Another is actually getting, you know, via numbers, you know, like getting other peers or colleagues and get their take on how are they managing this in their workplace. How are they learning and growing, given there's no formal mentoring program? How do you continue to grow in your role? How are you actually doing that? So asking others would be another way of doing it.
Yeah, there's confidence in numbers, isn't there? Like you said, there's courage in having people by your side.
This is a good question that's just come up about anger management, which is, let me see if I can pronounce your name.
I'm going to give that over to you because I thought about it and I said, no.
It's not coming up fully for me. Can you pronounce?
Kalisawaran? Sorry, I butchered that.
That's a good go. And if you could correct us, if possible, like sound it out in the chat. But you talked about anger management. I do not know how to control and manage anger. Okay, so here's the thing. When we can have boundaries around what's okay and what's not okay, you know, in terms of how people interact with you. Yeah. And when it comes to, you know, working with someone who has a disposition to get angry, it's finding them when they are not angry and having a conversation with them around, hey, you know, the other day when you were speaking to me in that tone, I was a bit uncomfortable around that, and I'm wondering if we're able to talk to each other in a respectful tone. I'm wondering what was happening for you at that moment. So it's actually having the ability to speak up and have a conversation with people around what's okay and not okay behavior. And, you know, not in the moment. I wouldn't be doing it in the moment. I'd be circling back to that person going, hey, you know, what was happening for you at that time? Because that tone wasn't great for me, you know, and I'd like to find a way that we can talk to each other in a respectful way.
I feel like a lot of the time when people are at breaking point and it comes out in anger or something hurtful gets said, or they snap, just for lack of a better word, it's because it's been a build-up of so many other things. And it's not necessarily you at the time, or it's not necessarily the person that's on the receiving end of the anger at the time. It's just like, it's what's that saying, death by a thousand cuts. It's the culmination of all the different things that have happened, and then that's that one thing that sent you over the edge. And I think it's so important to remember to, first of all, breathe and remember that, hang on a second, I need to think before I react. And then taking a step back and thinking, okay, so this is more than likely not a case of something that's happened right here and now. I mean, it could well be, but it's not all the time. And try to remember to think that it's something else that's going on. It's not necessarily what's happening right then. And I think if you remember to breathe and remember to take a step back and think, okay, this could be a reason for, like, this could be happening for a multitude of reasons, not necessarily what we're facing right now. And that sort of gives you 5 to 10 seconds to go, okay, I might not react as angrily as I would before, or the person that you're dealing with.
What you're talking about here, Christina, is people's emotional intelligence. and some people do not have the ability to self-manage
That's true. Yeah.
their emotions. And I think anyone who gets angry at something wants something to be different. So how do we actually help them get clarity about what they want rather than what they don't want? And it's not that difficult to switch the conversation. If you're going, like, it sounds like, Christina, you're really frustrated with what's happening at the moment based on that anger. But so what is it that you do want going forward? So sometimes our most vocal people at work, the ones that get most angry, want something to be different. So
they're just fed
actually
up.
find out, what do they want to be different? How would they know if things were getting a bit better? What would that look like? So you're actually inquiring into not the anger, but what they want instead.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the cause, but what they want instead.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Redirecting them to somewhere different. But
Thinking
it's also,
differently.
who's responsible for helping people know what's okay and not okay in terms of behavior. So it should be that person who is angry, their immediate manager or supervisor is responsible for their behavior. So are they leaning into the conversation to go, you know what happened yesterday is not okay. I'm curious, what's happening for you at the moment? So actually having the conversation, because I see it across many workplaces, no one has that conversation with the person who's most difficult. No one has that conversation. They just ignore it and think it'll go away.
Erica has just said something exactly what I was thinking before, is when somebody's angry or you're angry, if you're the one that is being approached by somebody that is angry, say, I would love to give you a few minutes to yourself, and then we'll address what you're wanting after you've cooled down a little bit. On the flip side, if it's you that's angry, go, look, I just need a minute. I just need a minute. But again, that comes back to your emotional intelligence. But Erica has also said, be kind with reflective people. Sometimes this type of question won't be answered on the spot.
That's spot on, Erica, because
100%.
some of us need time to think. And we can't think on the spot. So we need time to think before, addressing some questions like that. I'm wondering if there is any final questions that come up. Otherwise, I can.
Yeah, no, how about while we're waiting, I've sent through a message asking for any final thoughts, questions, or ideas. But Annette, why don't you tell us a little bit about your Mentoring Made Easy program in case anybody is interested in hearing more about that?
Thank you. So Mentoring Made Easy came about because I found that there was some really basic skills mentors needed. And I wrote this program based on what I normally do face-to-face or online. And so it covers the three elements that I spoke about before. So basically it's 4 hours of content and then 4 hours of practice with a mentee. So you're learning the basic skills of what mentoring are about. And it's all self-paced. We have an opening webinar each time a group goes through, but then you go through modules. It's a video, watch a video, then you go practice with your mentee. So it's a very hands-on learn skills of the basic skills of mentoring, covering those three elements of how do you structure the conversation, how do you set goals, how do you have follow-up conversations, and then how do you be with people that they'll open up with you and trust you. So happy to put in the show notes the link to the overview of the program. But yeah, generally
definitely. I'm also going to, obviously today's been recorded, and I will also be sending out to everybody who has registered a copy to the link of this webinar, as well as details of how to contact Annette and learn all about mentoring from her. One question about your program though, Annette, is it something that you have, once you've paid for it and once you've signed up, you have access to it for a little while, or?
Yeah, a year. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So you can revisit it if needed.
Yeah, and I'm also open in terms of circumstances. People have to extend that if required. But really, it's not much time to do it. 4 hours of content broken down into 8 modules. So they're brief modules. You learn a skill, you go practice it. And that's what I
Love
like
it.
about it. It's very
Yeah,
practical
it's
learning.
theory and practice. Yep.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
perfect. Well, thank you so much, Annette. I just absolutely adore talking to you. I think you're a angel in this world, and we need more people like you around. So thank you so much, and thank you so much to everybody who joined us today. Like I said, the show. Who am I? The webinar has been recorded, so I will email the link out to everybody. It'll be up on our social media channels, our YouTube channel, as well as our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and we can go from there. So again, thank you so much, Annette. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. And everybody else, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. And if you do need any further information, please reach out to either Annette at Annette Gray Consulting or us here at Myosh if you want to learn more about Myosh. We're always happy to help.
Oh, someone just asked the question, what is EI? Emotional intelligence. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for all your questions. It made it much more interactive. So really appreciated that. And thanks,
Love
Christina.
it. Thanks so much, guys. See you later.